What is up? What is up, you guys? We are back at it again. Another epic day here in 100 Days of Rootkit. I hope you all are excited to continue our venture here, showing how we're stitching all together the foundations that we've learned overall in Python and making some unique applications that are applicable to a multitude of things. All right, we're showing it in the package of video games, which is always fun. All right, everyone enjoys games, but it is applicable in any field. All right, applicable in any field. This is the foundation of everything we know it today online, the internet, AI, whatever is cool for you. It runs the foundation of it. All right, so I hope you guys are excited to continue on. But before we do, let's go ahead and finish up with our intro here so we can get to the good stuff. Let me make sure everything's good on this end. Turn down this just a little bit. All right. So, if you don't know, we are a Rootkit nonprofit organization here in the US of A. Don't go to college. Don't go to any other boot camp. You're already here. Keep watching. All 100 days, learn everything you need to know to pass our comp sci cert. Then, get a job. Just that simple, right? Nothing complex, nothing crazy, all right? And it's free 99. You're already watching right now. Look at that. On top of that, we do giveaways. Our current giveaway is not live. If you're in the Discord, pay attention. I will be posting in the Discord later today, pinging everyone that the next giveaway is up and running. On top of that, we are a nonprofit here in the US. So if you're in the US, hey, avoid your taxes. Donate today. All right, 100% tax deductible. So donate today. Depending on how much you donate, you can unlock certain rewards like our epic stickers, our collab t-shirt, and our epic sweater, which I highly recommend. All right. All donations are matched 1-for-1 for the first 10,000 donations. And we have pillars along the way, like street teaching for 24 hours straight, shaving my head here live on stream, and the goal no one wants to see, shaving my beard. All right, no one wants to see that one, so we don't need to get to that one. Alrighty. Let us continue our ventures here. As always, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask at any time. I'm watching the Twitch and the YouTube chat, so you can ask your questions at any single time. Also, I am in the Discord. Let me go ahead and move this all around. There we go. I am the Discord. All right, in the event chat. So if you are a Patreon or Discord premium member, right? I guess I should say Discord server subscription. I don't know. If you're subscribed to this, you can join anytime. Ask questions verbally. You don't have to ask questions normally like everyone else. All right, you can just verbally ask them at any time. So make sure you use that ability. Alrighty. Let us continue on here on our journey. So we left off with VS Code. Making our little server here. We made a server and a client showing off the basic concepts of both of them and throwing in a little bit of threading secret sauce to show the power of it, to show how we can use threads to upgrade our server from only being able to handle one person at a time to now infinite people at a time, which is super awesome, super great, and the power is there. It's in our hands, within our grasp. Let me delete this guy right here. So let's chug along. Let me go and zoom in on this a little bit just to make sure everyone can see. And let's chug along and see us complete the rest of the tasks we have here on our README, our little to-do list, all right? And as always, remember, if you click this little button there with the magnifying glass, you'll get the rendered version of this README, which is really, really convenient, all right? Let me pull up the chats here on the side just to make sure those are running. And let's continue our journey, shall we? Drink a little bit of water. All right, so ignore all the yellow stuff. Just little additions I was making for the Patreon members, which you can kind of see right now. All right, we shall continue. So on our README, why am I what did I do here? There we go. So in our README, we completed 2 tasks already: making a server that handles multiple clients and being a client that connects to the server. We showed last time how you can go through those baby steps, all right, one step at a time, to figure out everything you need to do in order to complete this task. It always seems overwhelming at first, but you always got to break it up into those little bits, one bit at a time. That's our whole slogan, all right? When you do that, it's easy, all right? It's easy. You'll get there eventually. You know, no one's saying it's going to be quick, but it is easy relative to, all right? So next, we should look at our tasks and see which one we want to tackle next. Now, again, brought this up last time. A lot of this is going to chalk up to experience. So you may want to do one thing, like connect to a server, and then you might figure out halfway through it, oh, I should have made the server first, or this isn't going to work until I made the server first. That's okay. Going down those rabbit holes and then figuring out that your path may or may not have been the right one, or maybe it has multiple steps, is normal. The only way you get better at knowing is by doing. All right, you guys got to keep doing. You can't just keep watching. All right, I'm making everything look very simple. All right, it is simple to a certain extent, but it's not simple if you're brand new to this. You got to be doing it yourself outside of these videos. If you're not gonna pass the exam. I don't care if you're using GPT-4 to assist you, it's not going to get you to pass the exam. You just won't. All right, we're very aware of AI systems, and we tweak our systems to make sure, hey, AI systems they're gonna help you, but they ain't gonna get you there, all right? And all it does is gonna make everything a little bit harder and more complex, because now we expect you to use these systems appropriately to figure out some of these basic concepts. So now you need to critical think more, all right? Job shifts are coming. So if we look here, we need to keep track of players on a map. Also, we need to display the map on the client side and where the user is on it. So it looks like with our game here, all right, with our little game here, we want to have it so multiple people can connect. And when they connect, there's some type of map that they're going to spawn in on, and then they can potentially move on the map. Lots of steps there. Lots of steps there. We got to break it up into little bits. Now, the teaser before was for the map generation where it should happen. It needs to happen on the server side. So in order to track players on a map and display players on a map, we first got to make a map, and we got to be displaying that map. All right, so let's cut everything up into little stages and start with the most basic stage, making a map. And how do we even display a map for the user? All right, so let's do that. That's a 2-part step. So let's make a map. Technically, you could break it up more. Making a map, then after we make the map, we need to send the map. After we send the map, we need to, send it to the client and then display it. So, simplest part, let's make a map. Now, some of you all might be a little thrown off here, like, how do you make a map? All right, this takes a little bit of thinking. I don't know if we really covered anything specific for it. So again, this goes into your exploration and a little bit of thinking. Effectively, we need a map is X and Y, all right? A 2D map, X and Y axes, and we got to fill up all of those with items, right? We're going to make a tiled map per se, and those tiled maps can have a player or not have a player, right? Very, very, very simple. That's going to require 2 while loops, right? 2 while loops to make this map, because we need to make it on the one axis and then make it on the other axis, but kind of do it the same. You'll see here in a second, all right? You'll see here in a second. You could also hard code the map if you want. That works. Now our map is going to be a tiled map, so we're going to use arrays for this. And arrays of arrays are perfect for it. So our server code is kind of getting clunky right now. We could start spacing this out, making some folders and putting everything into them, organizing. All right, I highly recommend you do that. For now, we're going to chug along, and maybe tomorrow we'll spend time cutting everything up and organizing it. All right, but there's no shame in keeping everything once and trekking forward just to get some, proof of concept stuff rough and done. All right, so let's go ahead and make our map. Now our map is going to be, look at that, it's trying to make a map for me. We'll keep going. Oh wow, it really did make a map. So this is if you want to hard code the map. Now this will work 100% fine. Now you don't have to use zeros. You could use, you know, actual strings in here. You know, maybe the map is just empty spaces. Maybe X is a person. Maybe O's are bushes. I don't know. Whatever you want to do. We haven't figured out exactly yet. I just want to see what it will auto generate here. You can hard code it or not hard code it. There's pros and cons to both of that. Again, with the hard coding stuff, it's very wet. All right, it's not dry, it's not modular, it's not easy to change this. If you want to make your map bigger, you're gonna have to go here typing a lot of stuff. All right, as a programmer, we want to be as lazy as possible, so it would be best just to generate the map every single time to our exact dimensions. It doesn't matter. This also gives us the additional option of having it dynamic. We want the map bigger, we can just instantly have it bigger. We want it smaller, we can instantly have it smaller. Doesn't mean you want to have that ability. It's just a byproduct of doing it in a more lazy way. All right, so let's go ahead and make a blank map here, and let's say that we want our map to be, what do you call it, map X max and map X max Y. So how wide and how tall it is. All right, let's say we want it to be a 5x5 grid. All right, a 5x5 grid. This would be kind of our configuration items, our settings for our game. I'm gonna put this all the way at the top because I like having my settings all the way at the top. So they're the first things you see. Again, kind of sloppy everything right now because we're mashing a lot of this in. So we'll clean it up later. Don't worry about it. So you can go in here and change these to be whatever dimensions you want for your map. But now we need to generate our map. All right, now we can write the code and do some testing here, but every time we do some testing, the server is going to start up, and yeah, it's fine. But why don't we make things a little bit easier, a little bit cleaner? Because we know we can use the exit function to immediately end our program right there. So we can just quickly do some prototyping right here to make our map generation. All right, so let's make our map generation. Effectively, to make our map generation, we can use for loops. So, wow, it already auto writes. It's so beautiful. All right, again, this is GitHub Copilot. It's about to get better with the new upgrades they're going to do. So it'd be a good idea to get it. All right, this is very, very convenient. So using 2 for loops or 2 while loops, great way to make this. For loops would be the more proper way because you know how large the map is going to be. But of course, as always, you can do it with a while loop. It's totally up to you on how you want to go about doing it. What's going to happen here is this is going to be for the x-axis. All right, I guess this should be more like the y-axis, right? Yes, this one should be more the y-axis, and this one should be the x-axis. Because what's going to happen is this loop is going to make it's going to add a new array to our arrays here. And every time this loops, it's adding a new array, which is adding a new vertical dimension for us. And inside of each one of those vertical dimensions, this is going to be adding a bunch of, looks like zeros, right? It's going to be just continuously adding a bunch of zeros. This logic is wrong. I think it looks like it's wrong. No, I think it's right. Let's draw this out because again, use every tool at your ability. If it's AI, use it. You're not cool if you don't use it, all right? You're not being cool or rogue, or you're just being old and dumb, all right? Use AI if it's available to you. If you need to draw things out to see it's more visual, use your pen, your paper, paint, notepad, I don't care, draw it out. Let's draw out this grid map a little bit so we can see what we're kind of doing, because for some of you it might be a little confusing. Now the question is, do I have the ability to paint, or do we need to go to a site? I'm not quite sure. I'm gonna give it like 2 seconds before we go to a site for painting. And we're going to a site for painting. All right. Good old edge over here. All right. Paint. I'm gonna be honest. Edge overall so far has been fine, but this is kind of annoying. I don't want to see this. I don't care about any of this, like, at all. It just feels really like clunky and spammy. I don't know. Side tangent, but let us continue on. Wow. Paint on line. There we go. Well, this. All right, perfect. So we're making a 2D map. So think about, you know, 2D games. Maybe that's Pokemon for you. Maybe that's I'm blanking on my 2D games. Old school Zelda, whatever. All right, 2D game. 2D game is just going to be a big grid. I don't see any tools on the side there for just making squares. So we get my beautiful, beautiful drawing here on a trackpad. I know you guys missed my drawings, right? It's been a little bit, all right? So we want to have a map. Our map is going to look like this, but it's technically more of like a tile map because that's all you can really do. Everything is a tile per se. Even 3D games are a tile per se, all right? Because you have little coordinates, all right? XY or XYZ for 3D games, all right? So on here we have X and Y. So again, Y is going to be our vertical dimension, all right? So this way and this way. And then X is going to be our horizontal dimension. So this way and this way. All right. So let's go ahead and finish drawing up our map here that our players are going to be on. Oh, just a beautiful, beautiful drawing. Not irritating at all. Perfectly symmetrical. Exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and draw these ones. And I think I kind of messed up the Y because we have in here, we want a 5x5 map. This is going to be our 0th place. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is not to scale. All right. This is not to scale at all. All right. To what we're about to generate. But the concept is we got this map that we're about to make. Oh, wait. No, this one is perfect. The x-axis is perfect. This one is 1 too large. So the point is, this is what we're making, all right? And the equivalent of this is having an array that is made of arrays, all right? So in our big master array, we're going to have subarrays, all right? This visually almost looks exactly like our little grid map. All right, so the big array that contains all these subarrays is the entire map itself, right? So I shouldn't do that. This is the, okay, maybe I should do a different color. Let's go to our green here. This is going to be the entire map itself. This whole thing that we see, all right? This is the entire map. Inside of this map, we have our y-axis, which is literally this right here. So we got our Y, just like how we have in our visual map. And we have our x-axis, which is right here, just like our visual map. Now, in here, right now, for our game, of course, this can be however you want it. Yeah, this could be however you want it. I guess we'll just roll with zeros, 1s, 2s, 3s, whatever. We're going to have an array that is full of zeros. So it's not by full, it's going to have 5 zeros because it's going to be 5 in this axis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it will go down. Oh gosh. 5 in total. We have 4 here, so it's not accurate. So we're building out like this. All right. Should look very close to exactly how the visual version of it is. I'm not going to do any more besides these 2 rows. So this is what we're generating with our code right now, all right? With these 2 for loops, we need one for, so this is containing the whole map. This is this beautiful part right here. Inside of this beautiful part here, we need to generate the map. So that's what we're using the 2 for loops, all right? So for loop number 1 is going down the y dimension, and we're adding new blank arrays, all right? New blank arrays that are like this into the y dimension. Then to move out the X dimension. That's what the second array here is for. And it's going to insert all of these zeros into each one of those arrays one at a time that we're manufacturing one line at a time. And then we have our whole grid. If you want to make a 3D array, you add another for loop, right? Every for loop that you pretty much add in here will be another dimension. So if you want to make a 4D map, add another one. 5D map, add another one. All right. The more you stack, the more dimensions you can have. That's why there's 2 of them. So let's see this more in a visual sense, shall we? If we go ahead and just print our map right here, and again, we're going to exit the program right there, so we won't be starting up our server or anything else. So let's go ahead and pull up our terminal and CD into that game server folder. You might not have to do that, depending on how you have all this going. But we'll see here that our map has been created. All right. Now, of course, it doesn't look like a grid map. We can print it out slightly different if we want. But you can kind of see there are 5 zeros in every single array, and there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 arrays in total. We have a map that is a 5x5 grid. All right, it's 5 height-wise, and it's 5 width-wise. And we can easily change that if we go in here and we want to say we want it to be 10. Now we're going to see 10 arrays. If we want to print this a little bit nicer, we can go ahead and just iterate on, will it auto-generate for me? Oh, this is going to be a really nice way to print it. All right, I guess we can do it that way. Oh, let me just run it. So yes, I'm going to change this to a simpler way for you to view this, because this is a more nicer way. This is what the exact logic we're going to write on the client side. So you can see here, now we have our map more in a nice visual sense. All right, it's 5 by 10 in this example, and if we want to change it back to 5 by 5, we can go and do save, and now do a 5 by 5. We have our beautiful map here that's generated on the server. Now we need to send it off to the client. An easier way to print all of this out is just iterate on the map and print every I don't really, okay, we're gonna for every line in map, we're just gonna print the line. There we go. This is a simpler way to go about printing it all. All right, so you can also see the exact same visual sense here. All right, so every line would be every single y-axis item in here. We're just going to print out. Any questions so far before we continue our journey? Checking the chats here. Drink some water. And I'm not seeing any questions right now. So if you do have questions, like always, just go ahead and ask them, and we will continue chugging along. All right. So we have a way to now generate a map. This logic here, absolutely beautiful. And we double checked its sanity by running this for loop right here to see it visually being printed out. So we know we are good now. We have made one baby step. The next baby step is to send it off to the client, right? Send it off to the client. So let's attempt to tackle that hurdle, right? Of course, we're not receiving it yet on the client side. We just want to see if we can send it off. So let's go ahead and delete this at the beginning of our server. So we'll keep our configure options here. At the beginning of our server here, starting up, let's go ahead and generate that map. So we'll just move that code over here. Now we're generating the map. Now you can use whatever you want, zeros, actual string characters, they all work the same. The pro is when you use, what do you call it? When you use numbers, there's a pro for that. Because if you use characters, right? If you use characters, depending on how you send over the characters, they could technically be bigger than the numbers, the integer values they send over, but that's not really the big thing I'm going to get at. The bigger thing is you can change on the client's side, because the client side will be rendering all of the visuals. The server doesn't render anything, it just does the background logic. So if you send it just zeros, ones, twos, threes, and fours, the client can render it however they would like. All right. So if you have multiple skins for the map, you can easily render it differently by just saying, okay, when they're on this level, zeros mean load the green grass. Or when they're on this level, it means zeros should load the blood tiles. I don't know, whatever game you end up making. So it allows a little bit more for future proofing, but again, it's totally up to you. They're all valid. All right, they're all valid at the beginning, especially if you just want to get a proof of concept up and running. So let's go ahead and continue on here. Just checking the chat one last time. So right here is when we are connecting, accepting, and then we're spinning off a thread to do the connection. Right? We're spinning off a thread to do the connection. So when we do that, we're here at this echo function. When we're at the echo function, this is what communicates with the client. So we can send here in the args the map that we want to send off. All right, makes sense so far? So in here for echo, we can go ahead and say comma, and that we want to send off the map. So let's call this map, and the map is going to be a list, right? It's a list of lists. So we're going to say list, and now right here in our args, we can say that we want to send the map, right? So we're going to send the map off. Awesome. So now this new thread has the map in it. Now we just need to send it to the client. So we know this C is the client. That's the current connection that we have with the client. And this dot receive in shorthand is how we can receive data. Also, if we do, we can look down below and see how we can send data. So let's go about sending data. So right now the flow of the program is they will connect and tell us something. So in response, we don't want to echo what they sent us anymore, which is all uppercase, all right? Instead, we want to send them the map, all right? So we can delete this data section right here because we're not going to be sending them that data anymore. This print sending is a great place to maybe print the map that we're going to be sending off. So we can just go ahead and change this to print and then map, all right? And maybe it'd be best to just keep the casting there. Right, and now we need to have this, instead of sending the data, we now need it to send the map. So let's delete everything there and say the map. All right, seems simple enough, right? Maybe not. Let's see if this worked. Right, let's see if this worked. Let's go ahead and bring up our terminal here, and let's go ahead and start our server. And our server has started. Right, it's sitting there quietly, just listening for new connections. So we got to run that second piece of code, our client, to see if we can connect and see if it will send that data successfully. Sure, our client isn't printing anything just yet, but we're going to sit silently and listen and see if we can connect. So let's go ahead and do our Python 3 server. No, sorry, client. Wait, we need a CD in the directory here. CD game server. All right, let's do our Python 3 and our client. Press enter. We need to type in something. We can also see we have connected to the server. All right, now it's just waiting for us to send some data. So let's go ahead and send it some data. Let's send hi. Press enter. Looks like it's hang and it might be a little broken. Let's check the server here and see what's going on. The server's not is not very happy with us right now. All right, we got to sending and it printing out the array. If we look through our code, we can see that this is where we say sending and we start printing out the array. Next, we go to c.send. Maybe that is the issue that we have because that's pretty much where the error is now throwing. If we look down at the very bottom, you can see right here in the stack trace that on line 18, which is this one right here, that's where the error was thrown. It's not very happy right now. What was the error? A type error, right? Doesn't like that the type of our variable here is a list. It wants it to be a bytes-like object, all right? Bytes-like object. Because again, we kind of talked through this a little bit when we went over everything yesterday. Not yesterday, the last class. When you're sending stuff over the wire, it must be in raw bytes because these are all objects. Python is an object-oriented programming language. Objects aren't just raw data like it is in C, where if you have an integer, it is an integer that takes up, X amount of bytes, and that is it. There's no extra fluff. Python has lots of extra fluffs because everything is an object, which means it's an integer, but the integer also has a bunch of other stuff attached to it. We need to basically scrape away all of the other crap and just be left with the original item. There's a lot of different ways to go about this, right? One of the ways would be to encode it, which I don't think we can do like that. Yeah, it wants to do it, but we can't. One way to do that is to make it into a string. All strings can be encoded, and then those strings can be sent across the wire. I didn't see any options for encode. I'm 99% sure you can't encode an array. Just to make sure, let's go ahead and just... Oh, see, this is the error I was trying to get the other day, right? This is the error I was trying to get the other day, which you will run into pretty common when you're making servers of any type that are listening, all right? Since we forcefully closed our application and we quickly tried to start our server again, it's very common for you to get this error. It's going to be an operating system error. It's going to say that the port that you're trying to use is already in use, right? That means that the server didn't fully close yet, right? So we have to wait for the operating system to kind of clean it up. If we rerun this now it works, all right? It's just a time thing. You just might have to wait a little bit. So let's go back here to our client and rerun. Let's say hi, press enter. Looks like we threw another error here. Perfect. Yep, I was pretty sure you can't encode, but if you put it as a string, you can encode. So this is one way to hack it. Now, this hack doesn't work for most purposes. Why? Because this isn't sending the, there we go. This isn't sending the array in a raw array form, right? Or the list in a raw array form. Yeah, you might be able to cast this string back into a list or do some extra logic, but that's a lot of additional upkeep and processing power the client must do. There are faster ways to send this data, right? There are faster ways to send this data, and you can see it did work this time. We sent the array and we got the array. But again, this array is going to be a string, which is not what we want. We want it to be an actual array, or I keep saying array, but a list in Python, all right? So there are other ways you can go about this, all right? One of those ways would be to use pickle, all right? We talked about pickle a little bit before and how, there's a bunch of ways you can save data to disk. You can just save, a save file directly to disk, or you can use something called pickle, which is doing the exact same thing, but it's saving it in more of a raw binary form because you just want the bytes to be transferred over. Additionally, a pro for pickle is it encodes all of your data in a way where pickle can then read it and reconstruct all of the objects that you've made. Now, it's a little bit overkill right now because we're using pre-built objects or pre-made or default objects that are in Python. So a little bit overkill. Where it's really, really powerful is if you have custom objects, like a player object that you made yourself. You can easily reconstruct it using pickle, right? Using pickle. So that's really, really awesome. The big power of it is pickle by default takes your objects and turns it into raw byte data to be saved potentially to a file. But it's raw byte data. Data is data. Bits are bits. It can be saved to a file, or you can send it across the wire. All right. So if we want to use pickle, we can just say import pickle, not pp print pickle. There we go. Now we can go in here and say, what is the command for pickle? Okay, so they use dumps. So dumps is going to be for once we package it up and we want to extract it out, right? So what is the opposite of, I'm forgetting right now what the opposite of dumps is. Show yourself. Loads. No. we want dumps. Sorry, loads is for loading it after we pickle it. Dumps is for dumping it. All right, so there's dump and there's dumps. All right, dump and dumps. Dumps, anything with an S, so load and loads, dump and dumps. Anything with an S is typically for strings, right? For strings. But you'll see both of these will be outputting bytes. So that one outputs a byte. This one outputs nothing. All right. So I think, do we want, it says it takes any object. I think we want dumps on this. Let's go ahead and see maybe what our little AI assistant here says. So let's leave a comment. It's trying to auto-generate stuff right now, but we can leave a comment and try to get it to follow what we want instead of searching this up. So we can say create code for pickling the map. Press enter. Send the pickle map to the client. That is what I want to do. Will you generate it? All right. Oh, wait. Go back. It wants to do it that way. Interesting. That in file for C, which is the client. Oh, would it automatically send it? Would it automatically send it to the... Oh. Let's go to good old Bing, because that's why we're using Edge in the first place, is to use Bing. So let's go ahead and ask this same question, but over in Bing. So pickling, instead of pickling a map, because it doesn't know what a map is, a different type of object, all right? We want to be more explicit. It's a list, all right? Create code for pickling a list. So let's go ahead and do signed out. I didn't even know that was a thing. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and sign back in. Give me like 2 seconds here. I guess I just needed to press the button and it just auto did it. Why even say I'm signed out? Just auto do it. All right, let's go and pull up everything again. And let's re-ask that question. Create code for pickling and a list. Let's go ahead and run that and see what our good assistant here, Bing, has to say. Now again, this is kind of dramatic because we should have just, maybe done some testing ourselves before, like just running it with using dump and seeing if it'll work. But we jump to this step. So this is great because it's showing that we can use it right here to make a list, and this is going to dump it right immediately into this file that we're opening. All right, we're opening this file called as the name FH. It looks like it will auto write to it. So before, our AI assistant over here said that it's possible for us to write directly to the client. I'm not quite sure if this is correct or not, but guess what? You know how we figure out? That's right. We try things. We try things and see if they work or not. We don't just sit there and get scared and Google this. Why Google it? You can try it right now and see if it works. All right? Try, fail, fail, fail. If you're not doing that, stop trying to become a programmer. All right? You are not made for it if you're not going to try to fail. All right. So let's go ahead and run the server. And let's go ahead and now run the client. And let's go ahead and put some text in here. It's hanging, which means we most likely have an error. So let's go back to the server side and see. It says file must have a right attribute, so that obviously is not working for us. So now we know that is definitely not the right way to go about it. All right, so I'm pretty sure we have to use dumps for this because again, oops, let me go back. So again, we have two options there, and you can, oh, did I mess it up? So now it won't even, rewrite that line for me, please. Pickle dot, okay, I'm gonna rewrite it. This is going a little absurd. So the issue here is it's trying to write to it, and dump looks like it's more made for a file. Maybe with the protocol you can go ahead messing with it, etc, etc, but this is looking like it's not for us. We know there's an alternative called dumps. The big difference is dump is going to return nothing. It's going to try to auto do everything for us. Very clean, very nice, very convenient for most use cases. Dumps gives us a little bit more power. It's going to output the bytes of it. As you can see, there's no file that it's trying to write to in here. So it's going to output the raw file for the raw data for us. So let's go ahead and say the map bytes equals what this is outputting. All right. So this is going to be the output in raw bytes of dumps, and maybe we can try sending that, right? Because we know we need bytes. All right. We know this wants bytes. It doesn't really say bytes here, but the error said bytes. This gives us bytes, so let's try doing that. All right, let's close the server. And let's go ahead and rerun the server. And it says our address is already in use, so we just wait a little bit longer and rerun. All right, still says it's in use. Wait a bit longer and then rerun. All right, wait a bit longer and rerun. This is kind of the annoying part with server development, and that's where, you know, as you continue, get certified first, doing it this way. As you continue, there are better ways to go about doing this, so you don't run into issues like this, like making containerized services, or maybe adding some logic in here, so when you do Control-C, it will handle it and close more nicely for us. So let's go ahead and enter some stuff in here. Perfect. As you can notice here, when we ran this, everything looks good on the server end. All right, the server handled this perfectly. It loved exactly what we did. We had no issues on the server end, because usually when we have issues on the server end, what happens? That's right, as we've seen, the client will hang. Right, the client will hang. This time, our issue is on the client side. Our client bugged out. All right, our client bugged out, freaked out, and crashed. Why? Well, before it was receiving data and trying to print it out. And we can see if we go to the client code right here, that it's going to send that message, and it was an echo server. So it sends it to the server, and the server sends the exact same message back, except it was all in caps. Now we're sending a message to the server, and the server instead is returning back to us the map. The map is in a pickled form, and it is a list. As you can see here, we're trying to decode. Encode and decode are for turning strings into bytes so we can send and receive them. This is not a string. This is a list that has been pickled. So we can't try to decode it. We must unpickle it. All right, we must unpickle it. So very easy for us to do here. All right, we can say import pickle. And over here, like I said, dumps is for turning it into byte data, and loads is for loading it back. Very convenient. Pickle's really great. All right, immediately we'll load it back into its original Pythonic state. It was like if you never even sent it over the wire, right? It returns back to exactly, it's like you cryogenically frozen that object. It traveled through tens of thousands of years, and then you thawed it, and it's exactly like how you left it. That's what pickle allows you to do, so it's super, super awesome. So over here in receive, we're no longer going to decode. This is going to get us the raw received data, which is going to be in data. So once we have that raw received data, I don't know what this is trying to do right now. We're going to say unpickled data, or I guess this is going to be our map. So let's say our map is going to be equal to pickle dot loads data. Why is pickle not? Oh, that would make sense. All right, loads, again, there's load and loads. So let's go ahead and take a look here at the difference. Loads is going to return something, all right, that can be potentially anything. And load is going to return also anything, all right. Looks like load is going to try to read from a file object, and loads is going to try to read from some type of data buffer that we have, aka what we just got right now. We just got some data and we want it to read from that, not from a file. So let's use loads. And then for our map here, let's, instead of it printing data, let's go ahead and have it print map, and let's see if this works this time. So let's go ahead here to the server, cancel it off, try to rerun the server. Rerunning the server worked. Let's go ahead and retry to run the client. We can say hi, and look at that. We got another error, but this error is we like this error because this error means that the pickling happened correctly. All right. It tried to print out our map, but it said your map should be a string to print out properly. Right now it's a list. That's the magic of pickle. It successfully did it. It successfully knows that the map is a list, and it says that it's a list right here. So if we just change this to string, so it's just printing out the string version of the map, and let's redo this again. Let's run the client code, say hi. Look at that. We've successfully sent the map to the client. Right? We've successfully sent the map to the client. This is super, super awesome and super, super cool. We've taken one new step of power forward. All right. Now we can print out this in a nicer way, like we showed before. All right, because we should be printing on the client side. We should be rendering our stuff. Right. The client should be rendering and doing all the prettiness. All right. The servers does the hardcore work. So we can make our for loop here where we say for every line in the map, we're just going to go ahead and print the line. We can remove this little print section here. There we go. And now if we rerun the client, because again, you see we're not restarting the server because we don't need to. None of the server logic has changed. We're just modifying the client so the client can display the data that we have more prettily. So we'll say hi in here. And look at that. Our client is now connected. And as you saw before, if we open up multiple terminals, so let's get 3 terminals going on right now. All 3 of these clients can now all at the same time connect at the exact same time. Python client. Whoops, I got CD into the game server. Python client. Now all one more. We have all, hold on. We have all 3 now, all connected at the exact same time to the server. 3 live clients, 1 server, all waiting just to send their initial message. They are all fully connected, as we can see right here. All 3 of them are connected right here. And they all are getting the exact same base map. I'm just gonna put H, and H. All right, they are all getting the same base map. We have solved the next little baby step, all right? Because again, you want to take every little item one baby step at a time. What questions do you guys have so far? I guess real quick before I get into the questions, if you weren't watching this and you couldn't figure out the dumps or the load section, use your Googling skills, your Binging skills, or your AI assistants, all right? Go over here, all right? Same question, slightly tweaked before. Create code for pickling the list. All right. This told you how to write it to a file. So you wanted to change this to create code for pickling the list for being sent via a socket. So this should modify it instead of with dump, with dumps. All right. So if you didn't experiment between the 2 or see that there were 2 that existed there, you can use the AI assistant here to help you out with it and see the example that it generates, which is generating a massive example, which I'm very happy about. And you can see here, it did the exact same thing we did. It pickled it using dumps and then sent that data across. And it's going to give you a beautiful, beautiful explanation. If you were confused on how to then read the data you sent to the client, of course, as always, we can change this from create code for pickling a list for sending across, create code for reading a pickled list that was sent from a socket. All right, and you can ask there. Again, you can get also results if you play around, or if you Google, Bing, and then of course there's always the assistant. So you'll see here, it's going to make a client for us, which is really nice, and show that you can use loads. Right? You can use loads here. There we go. You can use loads to read that data. Right? What questions do y'all have so far? Hopefully for some of you guys that did, follow through with the challenge over the last couple days, you know, spent time to experiment, look through, do some of these items, found this stuff out. Maybe you used pickle, maybe you didn't. You don't have to use pickle to do this, right? It's just very, very convenient. There's multiple ways you can go about doing this, but this is a very convenient way that I'll use out of the bat. All right. What questions do y'all have right now? Checking the Discord. All right. I don't see any questions right now. So, let's go ahead and do some git commits, save everything, and then we'll take our break, all right? Because we're about at the top of the hour right now. So we just added a bunch of code. It would have been proper if we first, I kind of forgot, but if we first just switched to a new branch. So let me go ahead and see what branch we're currently in. We're in the base client, all right? We're in the base client. So, we did modify the server, and it would have been better if we switched the branch to modify the server, and then it would have been better if we switched to the branch to modify the client. All right, so a little bit of predicament. What we can do right now, though, to maybe make our boo-boo go away a little bit more, is we just made the map, and we're sending the map, and we're doing stuff with the map. So let's just call this our feature map, all right? And that way we have a catch-all for the client and the server, and you know, we look like we knew what we were kind of doing, even though we kind of forgot. All right, that's all that life is about, right? Just making people think you know what you're doing. All right, so let's go ahead and do our git checkout here, tag B, and let's make. We're gonna check out into a new branch that we're about to create. We'll call this one feature slash base map, I guess. All right. So let's go ahead and then do a git add everything, and then we'll do a git commit, and then we'll say added generation of map and send, and it sends and renders in client. All right. There we go. So let's go and get and push that up. We have not made this branch yet, so let's go ahead and just copy that. That will make the branch and conveniently push up all our code at the same time. Now all the color has gone away here because we have no changes that don't reflect the server, the remote Git server right now. So things are looking nice. They're looking beautiful. All right. Things are chugging along here. All right. Also, look. Copilot, the best thing about it right now is, look, devs, including myself, I'm kind of lazy when it comes to documentation. It's one of the most important things, but it's not fun. It's quite tedious, right? Sometimes boring. Look at this. It auto makes your comments, all right? Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're kind of bad. Global variables, maybe not exactly what I would want to do here, but you know, for something that we just did here for like map generation, all right, look at that. There you go, create the map. It knows that, auto wrote that, so very, very convenient, all right? So honestly, maybe it's, I think $20 a month for Copilot. If you're serious about becoming a dev and you have a little bit of cash to spare, might not be a bad decision. That's all I gotta say, all right? You don't have to, but it's not the worst thing in the world. All right, so we did our git commit here. So we're gonna go ahead and go on break for the next 3 to 5 minutes. While we're on break, if you guys have any questions, please ask your questions. When we come back from break, we'll go ahead and continue forth. We'll first answer any questions that you guys might have had, and we'll continue forth with finishing up the map and allowing for users to show up on the map, spawn on the map, and then maybe move around on the map. We'll see. I don't know if we'll get there just yet. All right, so I'll see you guys in 3 to 5 minutes. Alrighty. Let's get back into it. Whoop, wrong one. There we go. Let us get back into this flow, shall we? I'll go and check and see if there were any questions while we are on break. But before I do, let's go ahead and finish up our traditional intro after break. If you don't know, we are Rootkit nonprofit here in the US of A. Don't go to college. Don't go to any other boot camp. You're already here. You're already watching. Keep watching. Learn everything you need to know and get certified. Get a job. It's really that simple. What are you waiting for? All right. Traditionally, we have giveaways every single week. We are going to have one, and make sure you're in the Discord. If not, just join. The link is in the description below. Once you're in the Discord, I will be pinging people later today for notification that the next giveaway is live. So make sure you join to win some free merch. On top of that, we are a nonprofit. So if you donate to us today, you can start avoiding your taxes. All right. All donations are 100% tax deductible. So donate today. Depending on how much you donate, you can unlock certain rewards like our epic stickers, our collab t-shirt, and our epic sweater. On top of that, all donations match 1-for-1 for the first 10,000 donations. So every time you donate, it's like donating twice as much. And we have pillars along the way, like streaming for 24 hours straight, shaving my head here live on stream, and the one that no one wants to really see, shaving my beard. All right, no one wants to see that except for my mom, so we don't need to go, doing that one. All right. Alrighty, so let's go and see as if there's been any questions since the break, and go ahead and start answering them, shall we? Alrighty, so looks like you guys are all goods right now. So let's go ahead and continue here on our journey in making this little server. So if we check our README here, we've made the little baby steps to complete these tasks, right? This task on the server here to keep track of all players on the map, and then for the client to display the map and where the users are on it. We have these pretty much halfway done. Again, all these tasks you always want to break up into little baby steps, one bit at a time. All right, tackle them one bit at a time, and bam, you'll be done with them sooner than you know. All right, sooner than you realize. So right here, let's go ahead and think about this a little bit. All right, we made the map, we're setting the map off. All right, we made the map, we're setting the map off. Next, we need users to spawn onto the map. All right, and then once they spawn onto the map, eventually we want them to be able to move around on the map. Now, just because we want them to move around on the map doesn't mean that we have to do that per se in some of these tasks, because this tag just says display user map and where the user is on it. It doesn't say make the user be able to move. All right, so we can spawn them all in at the same place, or what might be a little more robust, right, for us to see this logic in action is to maybe have them spawn randomly onto the map. I don't know, we'll figure it out. But we need them to spawn. That's the common place. The next ground here. All right, next ground. So the simple logic here would be once a new client connects, they should immediately get placed onto the map somewhere, right? And then be able to see themselves, all right? So let's go ahead and get that logic done, shall we? All right, any questions before we chug along? All right, I don't see any questions, so let's go ahead and chug along, shall we? Now, we have our little echo function here, which is for when we connect. And we want it so when a user connects, they'll be spawning somewhere onto the map. All right, so how we can do that simply is if zeros for our map here represent us just having a generic tile, whether that's a grass, lava, whatever, doesn't matter. Who cares? That's just the generic one. We need to choose a different number to represent a player. All right, a player. Now, this is where using your numbers can be very, very useful, right? We have negative numbers, we have positive numbers, and we have floating point numbers, right? We can use them all to various extents. For example, if we want, an easy way to go about doing this would have it so all positive numbers would be normal tiles, and any negative numbers would be maybe players that show up, all right? These are just all ways you can go about doing it. Maybe not the best ways of doing it, but they are ways of doing it. So let's go ahead and go about doing it that way. So when a player spawns, we want them to show up as a negative number, all right? So all we have to do is modify the map, and the map is just an array of arrays. We know how to modify a map of arrays, and we want them to be in a random spot on that map, all right? So we need to randomly choose somewhere on the map. How do we go about doing that? Well, we can use random, the module random, which we've seen before, and random will automatically choose a random number for us. We know we can use random.randRange to choose a number between whatever and whatever. We know exactly how wide and how long our map is going to be. So if everything always starts at 0 and goes to this limit, then we can just choose a random number between those two numbers, right? We need to choose two different random numbers because we need a X and a Y axis for our 2D grid, right? So we'll be running random twice. So let's go ahead and import random. And in here, let's go ahead and do random.rand range. And in here, we want to do a random range between 0 and map x max. And again, we want to do the same thing, copy and paste for our map y max. Now, the only thing is anytime you see this rand range or any type of range, do some looking around and see if that is inclusive or exclusive of your final number here, all right? So we look here, it says start and stop, and it doesn't say anything about inclusive or exclusive, all right? So we could test this ourselves to see. I never remember, all right, whether it's inclusive or exclusive. So the other thing we can do is maybe ask our AI assistant. I haven't tried this yet, so let's see. Is random.rand range exclusive or inclusive? If exclusive, that is true. If it is exclusive, we need to do that. Doesn't look like it's going to answer our question, so let's go ahead and we can, of course, we can just easily Google that one. But what's the fun in doing that when we have access to this bad boy? So let's go ahead and just run it here into the Bing chat and see if we can get our answer. As you can see, this is kind of slow sometimes, so it would be definitely faster if you just paste this into Google or Bing directly and just search it, all right? So inclusive for 0, but exclusive for 10. So we need to do a +1, right? We need to do a well, maybe we don't need to do a +1, I guess, in this sense, because we have lists that we're going through and it starts at 0 and 5 would be the index of 4. So we should be 100% fine right now. I guess the big point is just make sure you're always thinking about that, because some are inclusive, some are exclusive, and it can throw you off. The issue right now is we need to save the our X and Y here. So we can call this our spawn X and then our spawn Y. Now, if you don't like all of these variables being generated here, you can condense this a little bit, all right? You can condense this a little bit. Python does allow you to do multiple variable assignments. So what does that mean? If we want, well, we could also make this into a tuple. Let's just show making into a tuple. So let's make this into a tuple, and we can just say this is your spawn cores for spawn coordinates, and we can just make this into a tuple like this, and bam. You can of course use it as an array, but like your spawn point's your spawn point. It's never really going to change. So we can just make it in tuple. So we got our spawn coordinates here. Now all we have to do is put ourselves on the map. which this automatically generated very nicely for us, except we want players to be negative. So we say our spawn coordinates, 1, which is going to be our X. Oh, this is actually correct. All right. So the first is going to be our Y coordinate. So which array we're on. All right. Which array we're on stacked vertically. And the next is going to be our X coordinate, which is going to be that horizontal row. If you are forgetful like me, just run it, see what happens, and rerun it. Or sit there and think about it a little bit. All right. Sit there and think about it. It is A-okay. All right. Because I sit there sometimes, I'm like, wait a second. You can always just run it and see, right? You can always just run and see. So if everything is successful, this should be placing us on the map when we spawn in. So let's go ahead and start the server. So Python server. And how is, oh, we're, okay, we need, this is the server right here. Let's go and close this server and let's go ahead and rerun it. There we go. And let's have our client connect. That is the server. We want the client, Python 3 client. And let's just go ahead and give it something. And look at that. It is 100% working because again, all clients should be at the end of the day really is just a rendering engine. It just renders all of the hardcore logic that the server is cranking, all right? The server should never really be rendering anything, all right? It should just be cranking the numbers, the logic, figuring out the grids, where people are on the grids. It's never rendering it. It pushes it to the client, and it's the client's job to then display it. So you can see here that we have now spawned in at this coordinate. And if we want to reconnect, we've just spawned in at a new coordinate. Now there's some pros and cons to this, all right, on what's going on. As you can see, it is remembering every single place that we've previously spawned in, because again, threads are shared memory. So this map that we have is shared memory amongst all of the other items, which is super nice and super convenient. But it would also be really nice, you know, this is something for you maybe to figure out on your own free time. If I disconnect like I did right here, if I reconnect, I should be going back to my original spawn point. All right, up to you on how you want to do that. And then the last little bug is this player is disconnected, so they should disappear, right? They should disappear. So we got to figure that one out also. All right. But that's not our to-do right now. That is a problem for later you to figure out, not for current you to figure out. Because all we need to do is display a map and where the user is on it, which, look at that. We just did, all right? We just did. So let's go ahead and put an X there. And we need to keep track of players on the map, which we are kind of, all right? We are kind of, because it is keeping track of players by putting the -1, but it's not really keeping track in the sense that what we really want, which is they move and we update where they are. All right, so maybe you could put an X on that. Maybe I wish there was like a, is this an intermediate one? No, this isn't. So if there was an intermediate one, that would be really convenient. So let's for now just keep that unchecked, and maybe later on we can fill that out completely. What questions do you guys have so far about this little addition we have made? I'm gonna drink my water here. All right, I don't see any questions, so let's go ahead and keep chugging along here, shall we? So, if we look here, we did make it so people can connect on the client and that they'll be displayed. They now can spawn in. We have very basic spawn logic, all right? So when they despawn, we should probably change where they currently are. Now, this is where, moving forward, it might be most beneficial for you to think about this a little bit more in depth. Because as you're seeing right now, right, and this is sometimes that this is a very common occurrence, right? It doesn't matter how pro you are. The more pro you are, the higher level you are, the more you've been doing this, the more you can negate this issue, but it never will go away. All right, it will never go away, and that's just finding holes in your layout of what you thought needed to be created. All right, as we go through right now, you can see like, this is a lot of variables for the map. And we've talked about before, if you see yourself having a base name with a bunch of little variations, that might be a good indicator that you need a class. So maybe you need some classes here for this. And for your player, we don't have a class for a player, but we kind of see maybe we might need a class for a player to keep track of where that player is on the map, what they're doing. If we end up making an inventory system or a combat system, they need health, being able to fight. So we haven't really taken the time to make some of those base items here. Same thing with spawning in, and let's see what else here. I don't think there's anything here wise, but we also have some kind of repeat logic at certain points, and we can look here into the future and we can see maybe we didn't think through everything 100% the first time, right? That's fine. That's fine. It's better to figure that out, learn from it, sit, and then think on how you want to go about pivoting. All right, what additional things need to be made in order for you to keep progressing at a good speed. All right, so thinking sometimes and wasting, quote unquote, that time thinking and figuring out things is more beneficial than if you move forward. Because if you just keep moving forward and like, I'll make it work, you could really dig yourself into a deep hole. All right, so even though you might feel like you're wasting time thinking, all right, it might be more beneficial for you in the long run because you spend 30 minutes, an hour thinking, and now you're able to move forward on the right path and not going down any rabbit holes, compared to you keep programming for another 4, 5, 6, 10 days and then figuring out you really messed up and now you have to think through it, which you could have already done originally. And then once you think through it, you have to backtrack, rewrite, etc. It's just a more expensive issue. All right, so take your time, think about things, relax, chill. All right, so let's go ahead and think about this a little bit more, shall we? We know we need players, and the way things are going, to keep our example simple so far and simple in the future, we want to have it so when players spawn in, they exist until their connection is severed. Once their connection is severed, they need to be removed from the map, right? So we need some type of logic for removing. Right here, let's go and write it down. Remove players that are disconnected from the map. All right, so we need some logic for that. Additionally, we need to make a player class. All right, so we can store all the information about our player in that player class. We need potentially a system to manage all the players that have connected to our server. All right, because how do you know how many players are currently on your server? Well, you need to count them up. But how do you do that if you have a bunch of threads that are spinning? Well, you could say that you can count the current threads that are running right now. I don't think we've gone over exactly how to do that, but that is possible. But those threads could be in potentially a bunch of different states. So you could go about logic, maybe also looking into that and making it so you can view, which ones are in like an active status, and that's potentially a bunch of work also. Or we can just make a class or something that is the manager, a wrapper for all the players. All right, so let's make a player management class. It doesn't need to be complex. It could be just simply tracking what players exist, who they are, and that's it. Because we also need to know, if you haven't thought about it already, this works great for one player connecting. It will be player -1. What if 2 players connect? they're both going to be player -1 right now. That's an issue. So we need some type of way to increment this value and make sure it's unique for every single player. You know how we could potentially do that? Using a player management class. All right. So that would be very convenient in regards to that. And then we also, let's see, what else do we need to do? We have the map, players, player management. Players can do actions like move around on the map. Player management would be the initial values. This might be a good spot for us because we don't want to go too complex right now. So let's go ahead and say it's good on that aspect. Any questions right now, or do you guys think I'm missing anything before we chug forward? All right, before we chug forward here. All right, I don't see any questions, so let's go ahead and chug forward. I forget right now how many additions we made in here. So we finish up, we got to do another git commit because we did finish up the random spawning on the map. So let's go ahead and do a git add all, and we need to commit that we finished up random spawning on the map. So looking at the time here, we're almost about at an end. So maybe before we go down these new rabbit holes, right? We're pretty much almost done with our client. We just pretty much have a bunch of work to do on our server. And that's how lots of things are, all right? People get mad at game devs all the time. Sometimes it's justified because they're just lazy, terrible game devs. But the big thing is always keep in mind the client is usually the easiest. All right, usually the easiest. Not all the times, but it's usually the easiest because all it does is display pretty pictures when you need to display a pretty picture. But all the hardcore logic, the coding, the programming, to making sure everything is good, working correctly, XYZ, it's always on the server. So anytime something small wants to be done on the front end, there's usually a lot more code that has to be done on the back end. So keep that in mind. All right, keep that in mind. So that's completely normal. Talking about that, since we are kind of limited on time before we end this class today, let's just, before going down one of these rabbit holes, clean up our client a little bit more. What do I mean by that? Well, do we have a server running right now? We do have the server running right now. So let's go ahead and run our client real quick. So Python 3 client, run this, let's say hi. All right, so we're displaying our client like this. Really nice, but it would be nicer for this 2D game if we maybe started interpreting these as players and normal tiles, lava, whatever we want to do. So let's go ahead and make some logic in here. Again, we're going to do this quick and dirty. Tomorrow, we're going to spend the first part of tomorrow breaking this up into libraries, starting to think about how, well, I guess we could do that today since we have an awkward amount of time right now. Let's do some cleanup, break things out into libraries, and then we'll call it a day. But first, let's finish with our quick and dirty examples. So user connects. Then we want to display the map. The client is responsible for making things look pretty. So what we can do here is when we start to print out the map, instead of printing the entire line, we want to print every single tile one by one. So for each tile in a line, we want to print out that tile, and this logic right here is for ending the weird printing at the end. This, I believe, is going to make everything print on one line, so I think it's going to be an issue. Yep, it is. So we need to just put here at the end, print. This is the same issue we ran into last time. There we go. So we have things printing a little bit nicer here, all right? A little bit nicer. We don't have the arrays, the brackets, the brackets, the commas, all right? So let's make this a little bit nicer and have it so zeros don't display as zeros anymore. They display as blanks. And then we have our users, and we'll make them display as maybe a U for a user. And maybe we'll put some borders around the map. Make things really, really pretty, really, really nice here. So what we can do here is we need some logic, all right? If the tile is a 0, display a space. If the tile is a -1, that's a user, display a U. So we can say the tile's display should be a space by default, but if the tile is -1, oh, it's saying X. I like X. Let's do X. And instead of printing the tile, the raw tile's value, we want to print the tile display. So if we rerun this, there we go. We have a little bit nicer looking display here. All right. Of course, our logic on our server here is kind of a little messed up. So if we want, we can actually clean that up a little bit since everything is very simple. When a user spawns in this coordinate, they'll be -1. And when our connection is going to close here, let's go ahead and clean up the map and change it back to a 0. So that way, the map is changed while they're connected, and when they leave, it will clean it up and change them back to a 0. So this is effectively just spawning them. So now we won't see a bunch of X's show up on here. So let's go ahead and close the server and rerun it. And when we reconnect with our client, you'll see one person has showed up. We auto disconnect, and when we auto disconnect, it will clean up the map and remove us from it. So when we reconnect, you'll see there's only one person connected still. So that will work for now, just so we don't get the client display clogged up. As you can see, we got the inner workings looking pretty nice here. It's kind of confusing because there's a highlight there. We don't know where the upper and lower bounds of our current 2D map is. So what we can do is maybe draw some borders around it. So at the beginning of our map here, let's go ahead and draw some borders. Again, this depends on how you want to draw it. If you want lines everywhere, if you want lines just in between everything. I think the easiest right now would just be lines in between everything. So what we can do here is we need to do, like, first the vertical printing. So let's go ahead and print a bunch of these tacks like this, and we'll print them based off the length of the line. So again, remember in Python, if you multiply against a string, it will basically make that string happen X amount of times of you multiplying. So let's reconnect and see what this kind of looks like. There we go. So we can also maybe edit this a little bit if we don't like what's going on. And I think this is adding, every end is adding a space. So everything's kind of like this. Maybe we should also, print also has a start, I believe. Separator, and I kind of want a space in the beginning and a space at the end. So let's go ahead and say plus here and a space. And then we'll do that. So this should make it all more even. Oh, whoops, I removed this one. There we go. So now we're getting kind of like that display. As you can see, we put it right here in this first for loop, which is for our Y. All right, our Y. So that's why every single line here is getting the entire output. Now we got to do it for the X, aka in between all these items. So we would be changing these ends. I guess the beginning and the end here we would change. We can change these to pipes. I feel like it's a little too much because they're right beside each other. Maybe we just remove the beginning part. If we remove that beginning part, then we got to remove this one. I guess that looks a little bit better. And we just need at the very beginning of every single one, we need to print just a line there. So let's go ahead and at the beginning of every single line, which would be right here, this is the beginning of every single line, we need to print that. Perfect. There we go. That's looking a little better. And since that's printing at the beginning of every line, we need to move everything over by 1, right, for the vertical aspect. So let's go ahead and print. This is only going to happen at the beginning of every one. This is the beginning of every single one. So we want to do a print right here. And this is just going to be a space, comma, and nothing. There we go. All right. Yep. Spent a lot of time talking to myself. I'm not going to explain it too much, just a little bit to you, because I want you guys to struggle with this a little bit and mess with it. You don't have to display it like how I am. I just threw this together real quick. You can make it fancier. You can make it uglier. It's totally up to you. Again, this is for rendering the map. Pretty much you need to pay attention to what spaces show up where in order to make sure your player shows up validly on the map inside the tiles that exist. All right, use print, use that end, all right, to organize all of this. All right, you can use tabs also, but again, just like HTML, display is its own little cancerous world. All right, that's a whole rabbit hole. Lots of time can be spent on it. All right, it's best to keep the displaying to people that like UI, UX, your designers. All right, if possible, let them handle it. All right, so we can worry about the core stuff, the important stuff, all these server tasks. All right, that's the important part. So this is how you can go about adding a beautiful display. I guess we need one more line here at the very end that's missing. That's going to kind of annoy me. So let's go ahead and I need this to show up at the very end of the very last one. So I can do that outside the for loop and just say map, just any of the items for the map will work. Why is this print not happy? Undented does not match the previous. Oh, we have a small space right here. So let's go ahead and rerun this, and there we go. We need the same logic of this one right here. Obviously, this should, in our cleanup phase, we're going to put these into functions. So we do this. There we go. Now things are looking nice, uniform across the board. We got the little end one here now. So spend time dialing on how you want to display things. All right, you don't have to, but it makes things look a little more fun. And the main point here is to show that all the rendering should be happening on the client. Don't do this on the server. The server should be the raw array of the tiles. The client should be making everything look pretty, like how we're doing here. There's no notions of walls right now in our map on the server side. This is an artificial construct that the client is making, all right, to make things look a little more organized, pretty, XYZ. You can let your clients take forgetting the word right now. You can let your clients kind of do their own thing, all right? Add information in between spots that may be missing information. Now the last step here before we end, we need to do some cleanup, all right? We need to do some cleanup because this is a big old mess right now, all right? This is a big old mess. So let's do some. We want to start organizing some of this code because our main should just be our main function for our server. This is our main file for our server. It should just be the main function here. We shouldn't have our echo function, which needs to be renamed also. But we need to think about this a little bit because we're going to have some classes. Those classes should go into their own file potentially. But we're going to run into maybe somewhat of a dilemma. We have we can't really just make a library folder. I mean, you could, but when you're making a product, you might not want, again, this all depends on what product you're making, but you may not want the client to have the server code also. You may want the clients to pretty much be isolated from the server code so they don't know what's going on potentially behind the scenes, right? There might be important IP back there, all right? So you can't just make a general lib folder per se. You may want to make a server lib, a client lib, and a shared lib, all right? The server lib would be for libraries that are specific to the backend server and never should be ever shared with the client. The client lib, vice versa. Things that only the client need, the server doesn't need at all. And then the shared, which is universal to both of them, shared across both of them. All right. So it's up to you on what you want to do and how you want to do it. For maximal example sake, we're just going to do all of them. So I think I'm going to make a folder just called libs. And inside the libs folder, I think we'll make a, whoops, not a file. We'll make a folder called client, a folder called server. That went to the wrong place. I don't really like that VS Code does this. It's nice sometimes, but I wish that this button here, when I open it, would like not do what it's doing right now. Server. Wait, whoops, I need to go one more up. Server. All right, our client right here, we need to delete this. I want to delete this. But why? Okay. Okay, where's the terminal? This is just annoying me. Dumb GUIs. All right, libs. We want to go to our client. All right, and clear. And inside of our... Okay, I guess VS Code is just messing up, because if we look in our client folder, there's definitely nothing in the client folder right now. So we got a client server, and let's make one more called shared. Oh, now it shows up here. And as you can see, this is very common nomenclature. So they have nice little pictures for each one of these items. All right. So that's very, very convenient. So now we can start moving things around. Now our server has this function called echo, which we should definitely be changing to maybe the client manager. I don't know. Let's just call it that for now. So we're going to change this to client manager. This should not be ever sent to the client, right? Because this is backend only logic. This is just for the server, right? The client doesn't need to know this at all. So this should definitely go into the server folder. So let's make a new file in here, and let's call this our, I don't know, client manager. I guess this isn't really... Client manager makes me think of handling all of the clients, which we plan on making that player manager for. So we shouldn't probably call it client manager. We should probably troll it something else like client thread, right? So we'll just call that client thread. Maybe I'll just call this client thread also. I'm not that imaginative, you guys, for names here. So let's go ahead and just copy this whole thing so we can get it out of here. Copy, remove, paste. There we go. Now we have this in here. As you can see, some of our imports are missing, so we can just go ahead and grab them all. That's simplest, paste them. And VS Code is really nice because it will kind of make the ones that aren't being used a little darker than the rest. So any ones that are darker, we can just remove, so that way we just have the ones that are most necessary. So you can see we got some issues here, specifically with the global variables, right? With the global variables that we have. And we'll fix this here in a second. All right. So here, let's go ahead and make a file for our configurations. All right. So this could potentially go into shared. You can also have multiple configurations like client, server configs, and shared configs. I think for this one, right now in its current state, let's go ahead and put this one in shared and make this shared configs, py. All right, so this will be shared configs because it would be nice to share at least the map size with the client and the server, so they're both tracking exactly how big the map is. This obviously always just depends for you. Now to get them all in here, let's just go ahead and do our well, I don't even think do we need them in main. Main will auto generate the map right here. This should maybe go to some logic elsewhere. Let's go ahead and just say let's just go ahead and keep it the same right now. So we're going to import libs dot shared dot configs. We want to import, so from here import, we want the map X and the map Y. So we're going to want all of those. And then we're going to want to copy that and paste them right here, not in the client, in our client thread here. So we got those there, and now these ones are grayed out, so we'll go and remove those ones. So that's pretty much, now we're left with the main here. This is freaking out because of the echo, because we're not importing our, oh perfect, right there, our client thread. So let's import that full function and put it right there. All right, so I think our server's pretty much cleaned up, looking pretty good. We can do one last test, just run the server code and see if it's working, right? See if it just runs, and it looks like it runs, right? Partial test because we still got to modify the client, which I guess we can just test it with the client connecting right here. So cd out of this folder, we're in another folder. All right, so Python 3 client. There we go. Looks like it's working. Looks like it's working. I think I saw one bug. No, I guess it's not a bug because this did work completely. No, now it's bugging right now. So I thought there might be a bug. We're not going to fix any bugs right now. Just know there are going to be bugs. We're not going to fix them right now. We'll fix them tomorrow. All right? Because sometimes when you reorg, bugs will occur. Not usually because you reorged, but usually because your logic was a little too hard-coded, so it doesn't allow for quick reorganization, right? So this is also kind of a sanity check to a certain extent on how well you went about programming things. All right, so we have that. Let's go to our client. Our client here doesn't look like it needs much done to it. Something we can do is maybe change this, take this rendering out of the main and just make it into a rendering function. So this is something we may want to put into the client section, all right, our client lib section. So let's make a new file inside of client here. And this file we want to, wow, it's really bugging out. There we go. All right, so we want to make this maybe a map rend. We'll just call this map.py because we're probably going to make the map into a class later on, are we? I don't know. Let's just call it map right now. In this map, this is where we want to make our def map renderer function. In here, it's going to take the map, which is going to be that list, and then we're going to run that logic that we have right here. So let's go and copy all this logic. remove it from our main, paste it here. All right. And then we want to import that and print it here. So that function was called our map renderer. So we want our map renderer to go off right here, and we want to pass the map. We haven't imported the map renderer, so it's kind of being mad right now. So let's go ahead and from libs dot that was going to bring it up, libs dot client dot map import map renderer. There we go. So now we've shrunk our code a little bit here. Looks like we forgot 2 lines right here. So let's go ahead and get those ones and move them over to our function. There we go. All right. So now things are looking a little bit more official on our end. We have some structure going on. We have this libs folder, which is holding all of our libraries. All right. So that way we can keep our main functions as potentially small as possible, because again, your main function should just be ideally a quick overlay of exactly everything that is going on. So moving things off to functions is most appropriate, all right, is most appropriate, or libraries when you can. In our libraries, we showed a common file structure that you will see in some form or fashion repeated over and over again, especially if you're building these core applications, all right? You'll be wanting, again, it depends on what you're doing and how you're making it. You will want something like a libs folder that inside of it contains subfolders for all the client libraries, the server libraries, and shared libraries. All right. Again, all depends on how you go about making all of this, but this is a very common architecture, not architecture, but folder structure. All right, way of organizing things. So now everything's starting to look a little bit nicer. Maybe we could have some client configs and server configs to hold the host and the port. Again, yeah, some of you guys might be looking and like, oh, make the configs JSON XYZ. Yeah, you can do that too. All right, there's a million different ways you can make your configs. All right, right now we're using our configs in the folder as a Python file, so we can make configs in here also, configs.py. In our client, let's go ahead and make a configs.py. Inside of these configs, we can do some base items like our host and port for our client here. Let's go ahead and put the host and port from our client over into the configs. And let's go ahead and just import those. So from, not what I want exactly, client.configs, import host and port. So let's go ahead and just remove those ones. So now it's just going to be reading it from the config file there. And then the server configs. Now you could also set this up as potentially shared. Some of these items, maybe the port could go in shared, but we're just going to keep them separate right now just to kind of show the concept. Let's go ahead and grab these ones, copy, paste into here. And let's go ahead and delete this and write that import statement. So from libs.server.configs, import host and port. Perfect. Perfect. Looks like everything's just about good. Let's do one last test of just running our server. So let's run our server. Our server is running, so things are looking good right now. Let's go ahead and run our client, Python 3 client. Let's see if that runs. Looks like it ran. Looks like it worked. Everything looks like it's working right now. I think there's the issue if we run the client multiple times. Nope, that is working right now. It looks like our migration successfully happened. Successfully worked, and things are going the way we wanted them to. We now have a more pro setup. It's more modular. It's organized. It's looking a lot nicer. All right. Sure, the imports are a little bit more complex. There's a lot more kind of going on here import-wise, but overall, it's starting to look more pro, all right? If you go look at some other major libraries and so forth, you're going to kind of see a layout of this. Again, it's only for organizational purposes, right? A lot of the structure isn't there for any other particular reason, typically. It's just for organization. So how you organize your desk is as unique as folder structure organization, right? Unless there's something that's enforcing a certain folder structure, it's up to you. I highly recommend stick with depending on what you're doing, stick with the most agreed upon file structure. That way most people can get on board and understand what you're doing. All right. Try not to do something weird and wacky. All right. If you want the most compatibility, again, there's nothing stopping you because there's no rules, regulations, or codes when it comes to programming. But that's my advice overall. So let's go ahead and do a git add all and a git commit. And let's go ahead and show that we just did our reorganization here, which would have been probably more appropriate if we made another branch for doing the restructure, but oh well. All right, so restructured the files and folders. All right, so let's go ahead and push that up. Everything's saved, everything's nice, everything's looking great. And we can continue on tomorrow smoothly, making our additions, and everything is nice and structured out. So tomorrow, we're going to continue with our keeping track of players on a map, which is going to require us, technically we kind of did this. I'm not going to check it right now, but it's going to require us to make some a player class so we can spawn proper players, know what they're doing. Since we're using Pickle, we can just immediately send those players across and it will reconstruct them perfectly on the client side. And we're going to want some type of management class for all of the players, or per se clients that connect, so that way we can manage who's on the map, who can fight what. If they disconnect, they can no longer fight each other. Just doing general management and also displaying them properly, because again, everyone's getting -1. We need to make sure that's unique for every single player. All right, any other questions before we end today's class? Any other questions before we end today's class? Just checking the chats here, monitoring it. I'm gonna wait a couple more seconds to see if any other questions, comments, concerns come in. So tomorrow, real quick, tomorrow might be just like an hour-long class. I might be a little tired tomorrow, so we might just go for an hour, call it good, and then continue on the next day instead of normal, like up to 2 hours. All right. So I don't see any other questions, so we're gonna go and call that good. So I will see you guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow on the next one.